Hey, what's up, everybody? All right, so today, thanks for checking out the video. And I want to talk business and a little bit of economics, and I want to talk about the US dollar. This is the type of video where people won't pay much attention today or discount it, but a year or 2 or 5 years from now, they'll be like, wow, he was right all along. I just didn't pay attention. This is one of those videos. So I ask you to just watch for a couple minutes and just get a feel for what I'm saying, because this is some very important information about our society. All right, so check this out, people. All right, first things first, the US dollar is the world reserve currency, and I think we all know that, and we take full advantage of that. The US dollar is number one. That's the way it's been since 1920. Now, what that basically means is the world revolves around the US dollar, and it is the number one currency in the world, and it's the most valued. Now, however, if you notice, the US dollar has not always been the reserve currency. But what happened is since 1920, it has been. And unless you were born before 1920, you wouldn't know that there was a life or a world before the US dollar became the world reserve currency. So you can see all these different countries. You have Europe. You have all these other countries. You have France. All this. But the country itself is not important. What you want to look at is the length of time they were reserve currencies. So, back in the 1400s, you had one that was for 80 years. Then you had what, 410 years, another for 80, then one for 95, then one for 105 years. And now the US has been the reserve currency of the world for the last 99 years. So if we're going to look at the trends, the US dollar could be um, removed from the world reserve currency literally at any time. Like I said, we're at 99 years. Then the European currency was 105 years, and one before that was 95, and 80, and 110. So we're at 99 years. So at any time, things could change. At any time, things could change in our economy. So, what does that mean? What am I saying? Well, we have to understand why the US dollar is the reserve currency and what would happen if it is removed from reserve currency. But first, let me show you something else. The US dollar is run by, I would say, well, I won't say run by, but a big piece of the US dollar and its dominance is thanks to petrodollars. And the petrodollar system is basically an agreement between the US and Saudi Arabia, where they set oil prices in US dollars. Now, this is an Investopedia, okay? So that means every country that purchased oil from the Saudi government will have to exchange its currency into US dollars before completing the sale. So think about that for a second. If you want to buy oil, you can't use your own currency. You have to use US dollars to do it. And so eventually, all the other OPEC oil producing countries, they followed suit. So no matter where you are in the world, you have to buy oil using US dollars. So that created a demand for the US dollar. All right, that's very important to understand. So this keeps the US dollar at the forefront. It keeps it in demand. And that, again, is petrodollars. And I got this from Investopedia. Now, I'm not going to go into the details about petrodollars and all of that, how they came about, but just understand that right now, this is key to keeping the US dollar in demand. petrodollars. Okay, so I want you to go back and just remember this here. All right, US dollar is the world reserve currency, and it's been that way for 99 years. At any time, it could change. We don't know when, but we could be running out of time if we look at history. And again, that's a problem. A lot of people don't look at history. So that's something you want to consider. Okay. So why is this important? What if the US loses reserve currency? What would happen to the US and the US dollar? Well, I want you to look at our what's called the trade deficit and the trade surplus. And this basically shows how we are spending more than what we are bringing in. And basically this shows, for example, this here, US trade deficit hits record $74.4 billion in March of 2021. So what does that mean? That basically means we are spending more than what we're bringing in. And that's a very important point when it comes to our economy and the trade deficit. So ask yourself this. If you were to look in your closet right now or anywhere in your house, all right, what would you see? Where would these items be from? Would they be from the US, made in the US, or made in China? Where would they be made from? For a lot of us, these items would be made in China. And that is a huge, huge problem. We don't create enough items to export outside of the United States. Does that make sense? So look at this picture here. Let me show you, see if I can find it here. Okay, this picture here is quite interesting. We import $3.1 trillion worth of goods, and we export $2.5 trillion worth of goods. That should be reversed. We should send out more than what we bring in. It's almost like if you spending money on a credit card. If you pay all your bills on a credit card, but you don't have enough income to pay that bill back, you're going to keep running a deficit every single month. And that's exactly what we do here in the United States. Every single month. And that is another major problem here. So as I said, we spend more than what we bring in. So again, ask yourself, look in your closet, and most of your items are made in China. Most of your electronics are made overseas. Most of even our food comes from other countries. So a lot of the products that we use, that we buy, they're made in other countries. My shirt is made in another country. My shoes are made in another country. So all these manufacturing jobs and industries are overseas. So I want you to remember that. Now, tie that in to the US currency and petrodollars. So I want you to go back and look at this one more time. Let's look at that one more time. Like I say, I really want people to start connecting the dots here. We are the world's we are the world's reserve currency. That means everyone is using the US dollar. One big reason that we use the currency, everyone uses our currency, is because of petrodollars, where any country that purchases oil must exchange into US dollars before completing the sale. So they have to use our dollars. Okay, so now let's go back to this here. Our trade deficit hit record $74.4 billion in March. That means we are not importing, we're not exporting as much as we're importing. So basically, the demand for our products and services is not as good or as high as we want it to be because we're at a negative. Okay. So again, we import $3.1 trillion worth of goods and we export $2.5 trillion worth of goods. So here's the question that I want you guys to think about. If we lose the world reserve currency status, what will happen to the US dollar? What will happen to us? Basically, what will happen is the demand for the US dollar will drastically decrease. This is very important, people. This is very important. If we lose the global reserve currency status, the value or the demand for the US dollar will decrease. Again, look at history. There are many other countries whose dollar held the world reserve currency status, but they eventually lost it. If we lose world reserve currency status, what will keep people wanting to buy or have the US dollar? Remember, we have a big trade deficit. We have a big trade deficit. That's number one that you must remember. Another thing that we have to remember is we also are printing trillions of dollars. We print and just print and just print money. And that can increase the risk of inflation. So, so this is the US debt clock. All right. Now, this is real time. Today, I believe, is June 6, 2021. And as of right now, the US national debt, this is how much we owe. That's national public debt outstanding. And it represents the face amount or principal amount of marketable and non-marketable securities currently outstanding. We currently owe 28 trillion 374 billion 394 million, $295 million. That's how much we owe. That's the national debt. That is the national debt. That is how much we owe right now. That's how much we owe. So if we lose reserve currency status, how will we pay this back? That is the $1 trillion question. We are severely in debt. So again, if we owe all this money and our imports are greater than our exports, how do we expect to pay this back? That is something that I want people to really start to think about. So again, this came out on May 4th of this year, and our trade deficit is $74.4 billion. If we lose that reserve currency status, like other countries have, again, the demand for our dollar will decrease. And then the question becomes, how will we pay back our debt if we are importing more than we are exporting? Again, I want you to ask yourself. Again, look around your house. All the items, most of the items that you have in your home were made in other countries. That is an import. If you go to another country, what items do they need in those countries? What items do people need in those countries that come from the United States? What do they need? What do they buy? You tell me. I'm not sure. This is the problem that people really need to start thinking about. How the way we live now, it could all change in an instant if and when we lose that global reserve currency status. So now the question you may ask yourself is, if this is true, what can I do? How can I protect myself? Well, that is the crux of this video. I want people to understand what's going on. So if things really get bad, they'll understand why. Okay. Now, we have this reserve currency status right now. And because we do, the national debt is not really affecting us as a nation because the world still needs US dollars. It needs US dollars. So you can almost say they are tolerating our debt. They are living with it only because of petrodollars. But ask yourself again, if we did not have petrodollars, if the world did not have to buy oil using US dollars, what would they do? How will we survive? See, what's going to happen is things are going to get a lot more expensive because the value of our dollar will decrease because the demand will decrease. Okay, so here's something else I want to show you as well. So here's an article that came out June 3rd, and it said Russia to remove dollar assets from National Wealth Fund. And basically, they are saying Russia will completely remove US dollar assets from the National Wealth Fund while increasing the share of the euro, Chinese yuan, and gold. With the expected changes, with the changes expected within a month. So they will remove their dependence on the US dollar. Okay? And so it says after the changes, the share of the euro will stand at 40%, the yuan at 30%, and gold at 20%. Then the rest at small amounts of 5% each. This is very important news because basically they are saying they don't need the US dollar anymore. They will be able to function just fine without it. Okay, so I have another article here about Russia and removing the US dollar. So it says Russia will completely remove the US dollar from its dollar assets from the National Wealth Fund. Okay, and the Biden administration imposed a raft of new sanctions against Moscow in April. See, when the US doesn't like what another country is doing, it will impose sanctions. And those sanctions revolve basically around not being able to use the US dollar. And so that can really hurt a lot of countries because they have to buy oil in US dollars. Well, a lot of countries are starting to get away from using the US dollar. And as a result, those sanctions won't be as effective. So let me read something here from this very article. It says, the messaging is we don't need US dollars. We don't need to transact in dollars. And we are invulnerable to more US sanctions. Okay, so that is very important. And further down in this article, they said, I'm going to read a quote from US Treasury official Michael Greenwald. He says, what alarms me is if Russia, China, and Iran each create central bank digital currencies to operate outside of the dollar and other countries follow them, that would be alarming. It would be very alarming because, again, if they move away from our dollar, we will be in a world of hurt because these countries do not need our dollars. They don't need us. And people need to understand that. And if more countries start to do this, and you couple the fact that we already owe trillions around the world, the value of our dollar is going to decrease. The cost of goods is going to drastically increase. And there are some things we just may not be able to afford as a nation. Now, some people may think, well, you're just talking crazy. Again, you have to look at history. You have to know the history of the dollar, of money in general. And this chart clearly shows how things could be drastically different in our society if we're not careful. So there's one more thing I want to show you guys, and then I'm going to be done. All right. So you may say, well, what are people going to do? What are other countries doing to protect themselves? They're buying gold. They're buying gold. And this came out in April of this year. China's back on gold buying spree, opens borders to $8.5 billion worth of the shiny metal. So China is buying gold. All right, that's number one. Number two, central banks are buying gold. And this came out in April of this year. Hungary triples gold reserves. Now you may say, well, I don't know anything about gold because they don't talk about gold on mainstream media. Well, they don't talk about gold um, because it's not fun. It's not exciting. Cryptocurrencies are exciting. You know, the stock market going up is exciting. But see, this is what's going on behind the scenes. These countries and central banks are buying gold. And they're not buying a couple of little gold chains. They are buying tons of gold. Okay? So they are buying gold by the ton. All right. And the reasons why they're doing that is because gold is one of the most crucial reserve assets worldwide, and it carries no credit or counterparty risk. And also, it is a way to protect your wealth from inflation and from the weakening US dollar. So, also, the Polish central bank said to be looking to buy at least 100 tons of gold in the future. So, this is what they're doing to protect themselves from inflation and protect themselves from the US dollar. And let me see one more thing from this article here. Here we go. The appearance of global spikes in government debts or inflation concerns further increase the importance of gold in national strategy as a safe haven asset and a store of value. So gold is a store of value, and it is considered a safe haven asset. So if you are just focused on the stock market and focused on cryptocurrencies, you could be making a big mistake. And I say that because I'm just looking at the facts, and I'm looking at what these entire countries are doing. If entire countries are buying gold to protect themselves, if China and Russia are buying gold by the ton, if Russia comes out and says they are removing the dollar from their wealth fund, this could be a huge problem for the United States going forward. So I'm strongly suggesting that we, as people, as a nation, wake up and figure out what we need to do to protect ourselves. And I keep coming back to this here, and I want you to ask yourself, if we are in debt the way we are, because you can clearly see this, how are we going to pay that back if the demand for the US dollar decreases. Like I said, I already know a lot of people are not going to watch this. They don't care, and they don't believe that we are in trouble as a country, as a society. But I'm trying to tell you, things could change in a heartbeat. Things could change in a moment's notice. And that moment's notice means the US dollar is in trouble, and we must start to prepare for that trouble. So, again, look at this and ask yourself, if we lose the world reserve currency based on history, what will prompt other countries to buy our products? What will prompt countries to use the US dollar? If countries like Russia are already moving away from the dollar, what if other countries do the same? It's very possible they will. If we lose that world reserve currency, the value of the dollar can decrease, inflation can increase, and we will not be able to afford some of the things that we take for granted today. The only way, based on history, the only way we'll be able to is if we have gold and silver. Silver is another precious metal. I didn't really talk about silver today. We can do that another day. The fact of the matter is, if all these countries and central banks are buying gold by the ton, and it's not even being discussed on mainstream media here in the United States, that should make you think and wonder what is going on around the world. What are they not telling us? Well, I'm telling you, even though most people won't listen to me, I'm telling you that we need to start buying gold. Get you some gold, get you some silver, gold coins, silver coins. That is the key to protecting yourself, because we don't know what's going to happen and we don't know when it's going to happen. But when it happens, it's going to be nasty, it's going to be ugly, and we will need to protect ourselves. So if you're listening, please let me know what you think. Leave me a comment. Um, have a strategy. Don't just go through the world thinking everything's okay. Things are changing, and it is a once in a generation or once in a lifetime type of change we're going through. Let me say this now. A lot of people are getting crypto because they're trying to get away from the dollar. So if you want to do that, do that. Personally, I have some Bitcoin myself. I would rather have it than not have it, because if things get really crazy, I want to have as much money as I possibly can outside of the US dollar. And if other countries are doing it, then maybe, just maybe, you should look into it too. So let me know what you guys think. Please leave me a comment. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Please share this information. This is something that we really need to talk about and discuss, because it's not being discussed anywhere, and you must prepare yourself for the impending crisis that is definitely coming our way. And I can promise you it is coming. So in a couple of years, people will look at this video and be like, wow, he was right. But hopefully, if you're watching right now, you're going to be like, okay, I need to start making some changes and prepare now. All right. So you guys take care, and we will talk later. Peace. That shit don't work.